Aloha! Welcome to the Live Ukulele podcast. My name is Brad Bordessa. Thank you for joining me this week on the airwaves. In this episode, I want to talk about caring for your ukulele, how to make sure it doesn't get damaged, how to make sure you keep it in top shape, how to just make sure it's going to last for you and hopefully for future generations. Just a quick update from Live Ukulele headquarters. I've been spending the past couple of weeks beginning to shoot and record and edit my new video course, Left Hand Technique for Ukulele. I'm about 15 lessons in, 15 videos in, and it's shaping up super nicely. It's going to end up being probably even more content than I thought at first, which is, I guess, a good thing. But yeah, I'm really excited to get it out in the world. I'm not sure exactly when it will launch. I'm thinking like April or something sometime if I can keep cranking on getting the content out. Keep an eye out for that. Please subscribe to my newsletter over at liveukulele.com if you want to be kept up to date on all of my endeavors, or keep your ears tuned here to the podcast. I'll certainly be announcing that here. In the meantime, you can check out the Left Hand Technique for Ukulele ebook, which is kind of an overview encyclopedia of all of the different concepts I'm going to be presenting in the course in extended sequential video form. So as always, thank you for your support and thank you for tuning in. Let's get right to it. Taking care of your ukulele really starts at the instrument level. Depending on what kind of instrument you have, whether it be something that is purpose-made to kind of take abuse and be used in situations that are not conducive to other instruments, you're going to be able to maintain and care for that instrument quite differently than you would something that is less robust and more prone to damage, such as a solid wood ukulele. For instance, I have had my outdoor tenor ukulele for a number of years. It has traveled around the world with me as I've gone on different adventures, and it's never been in a case, ever. I have two of them now, and neither of them have ever set foot in a case. When I was traveling, I would just strap it to the outside of my backpack and, chuck it under the seat on the plane or chuck it on the luggage rack in the train or whatever. And it's fine. Both of those ukuleles are to this day completely playable. They haven't been damaged in any noticeable way except for some scratches that you would expect and missing a couple tuner buttons, but that's no fault of the ukulele. That's the tuners. So in that case, I don't need a case. There's no reason to have that because the instrument is specifically designed to basically resent care, right? There's no need for it. But if you have a more fragile solid wood instrument, it's nice to have a case for it. And a case allows you to have kind of a permanent home for that ukulele. A lot of times we'll get our instruments out, and at least for me, I'll take the case out, put it on my bed, and then get the ukulele out. And while I'm playing, the case remains on the bed. But if I'm going to take a quick break, I will put the ukulele just down on the bed without putting it in the case. And this is fine. It has been fine. I haven't had any accidents. But in situations, especially where you have guests or pets or children around, I see and have seen how this cannot be fine very quickly. If somebody forgets that it's there and lays down on the bed or sits down on the couch, or animals start jumping around, kids start playing, things can get broken really quickly if that ukulele isn't in a very specific home. And that home doesn't have to be a case. It could be like a wall hanger if you have appropriate humidity in your house. That is something to consider as well. It's an easy way to keep the instruments easily accessible, and it's quick to grab them if you decide you want to play. Some people find that having their instruments well within reach at any given time makes them more likely to play, is that it's not humbug to go get the case and then unlatch the case and then take the ukulele out and then play. You can just grab it and go. But for the most part, I'm a firm believer that if you have an ukulele, that is certainly special to you, but also something that's a little bit more on the fragile side, solid wood, or if you have a laminate ukulele that is really your pride and joy, get a hard case for it, because it's really cheap insurance for anything that could go wrong with the ukulele. That hard case, even the worst hard case you can buy, is going to provide significant protection over something like a soft side gig bag. Now that ukulele is a little more popular, we are starting to see some more padded, strong, stiff gig bags that I would feel more comfortable keeping an instrument in. But like the real cheap ones that have barely any padding that you can like easily bend in half without an instrument inside, those are the ones where it might protect from scratches, but it's never going to protect from a strong impact or like a forceful push from something. Like if somebody were to sit on it on the couch inside the gig bag is essentially useless. It's still going to snap in half. So in that case, I think a hard case is the way to go. They don't cost that much. You can get something that'll do the trick for $50. Like I said, it's cheap insurance, especially if you have a high dollar ukulele that you're trying to protect. Having that case and having a routine so that it always goes back in the case, gets locked up, and gets put in a very specific spot. I feel like that's nice to have, and it just kind of minimizes the chance of there ever being damages to that instrument or there ever being problems. When you're traveling, that case can also become a handle for your ukulele. It sounds silly, but if you don't want to have the ukulele just carried around by its neck, you have to somehow give it a handle. And the case does that so that when you're traveling and moving around, you can hold it and it's not going to get banged up if you bump into something. Also, you can get cases with the backpack straps, which some people hate. I think they're great. And especially for going to a gig or something, I'll always put my ukulele strapped to my back, and then I have 2 free hands to carry the rest of my gear. A lot of cases that you buy will actually come with the backpack straps, and you can just clip them onto the D-rings. They're not always super comfy like this, but I am a huge fan of the Oahu ukulele case brand that Andrew Katakis is managing, taking care of through Hawaii Music Supply. Their hard side fiberglass cases, I think, are super comfy with the backpack straps for being like just a hard piece of plastic against your back. The way they're designed and shaped, for me, it's really comfortable. And just in general, I think that they're really strong cases. They seem to do the trick. And as far as case strength goes, unless you're expecting to put your ukulele like under the plane with the rest of the luggage, I don't really see the point of having a super strong, heavy-duty case unless you have an extremely expensive ukulele. Because even if you have an extremely expensive ukulele, if you're not putting it in situations where you're going to be just chucking 80-pound luggage bags on top of it, there's not really any reason to have that extra, military-grade protection that you get from a Calton case or even an Ameritage case. In exchange for that weight, I don't know if the protection is worth it for the majority of situations and the majority of people. I used to have an Ameritage case, but I realized that these Oahu cases that I'm now using, they give, 75% of the protection, and they're significantly lighter and nicer to carry around just on a day-to-day. Something to think about in your environment is the humidity. And fortunately, this is not something that I have to worry about here in Hawaii because everything's great all the time. No, not necessarily, but certainly if you're in a dry location, your instrument might not like that too much. They say that the ideal humidity for the average instrument is 40 to 60% humidity. So if you're in an area like Arizona or somewhere where it's way drier than that, you probably want to put a humidifier in your case, or if you have your ukuleles out and about, hanging on the wall, sitting out on display, whatever it might be, you should have a humidifier in the room with them. Because if you don't provide that extra water in the air, the instrument's going to slowly dry out, it's going to be more prone to crack along certain edges, and just everything shrinks. And if something doesn't shrink, like the frets, which are metal, they're not going to shrink noticeably. They begin to stick out from the edge of the fretboard because the fretboard and the neck are actually physically shrinking. So a lot of times that's one of the most noticeable things about an ukulele being in a dry climate, is that the frets will start to stick out of the side of the neck. And it can also be really wacky for the action. Kind of the height of the strings and the neck angle and everything can be greatly affected by having an ukulele that is all dried out. And so the humidifier can be as simple as you want it to be. It could just be a sponge in your ukulele case, just something to make sure that there's moisture in the air. There are certainly a number of options that you can buy if you want. Aldrin made, I don't know if it's even still live, but he made a video on how to make a humidifier out of a Pez dispenser long time ago. This is at least 10 years ago. But it was a clever way to kind of DIY a little humidifier for your case. And you just make sure that it has water, whatever the sponge material is. You make sure that it's full of water so that that water can be let out or released into the case to keep things humid for the majority of the ukulele's time there, right? If you're practicing for 12 hours a day, you might have to think about maybe getting a room humidifier because a lot of the ukulele's time is going to be out of the case. But when it's in the case for the majority of the day, you play for an hour or two, there's still many, many, many more hours that the ukulele is in that more humid environment and retaining its moisture. It's kind of a funny thing because it really depends on your climate. It depends on where the instrument was made. Like, for instance, a lot of people buy a Hawaiian-made ukulele from Hawaii Music Supply or MIM or whoever, and they get this beautiful Hawaiian ukulele in their climate, but the Hawaiian ukulele is used to a more generously humid Hawaii climate, and when you take it somewhere that's more dry, people don't think about it, and all of a sudden their ukulele is cracking, and the action's all messed up, and the frets are sticking out, and it's not, again, a very pretty sight. Some folks say that if you are in a very, very humid environment, that you should try and dehumidify the air around your ukulele as well, so that it's not getting oversaturated with water. There are a lot of days when there's water just dripping down the screens here where I live, just from the clouds being on the ground, really low clouds or fog or whatever, and the humidity is 100%. Just everything's wet. You can't dry anything off. And it's never been a problem. I've never noticed it. Maybe it's because the instruments that I play have all been made here. They're a little bit more used to that baseline high humidity. But perhaps if I was to play an ukulele that's made in the mainland and it was shipped out here and it got, shocked into 100% humidity, things might not go so well. I'm not sure. But for the most part, I haven't felt like having that dehumidifier is nearly as important as having the humidifier for dry climates. So keep that in mind. You can look at any kind of weather website and it'll tell you approximately what your humidity level is where you live. If you're within the 40 to 60% range, that's primo. You don't need to think about it anymore. And if you're higher than 60%, like Hawaii or Thailand or wherever else is very humid all the time, then, maybe check with people in the area who have instruments and find out what they do. Find out if is it really that humid that you need to get a dehumidifier, or is it fine? And certainly if you're lower than 40%, think about getting a humidifier to keep your ukulele hydrated. If you want to be a little bit more involved in your ukulele's maintenance, you can get a number of different kinds of polishes and oils that you can use to maintain the instrument further and kind of keep it in its most beautiful state, if that's important to you. The Virtuoso instrument cleaner and polish have been recommended to me by Chuck Moore That's what I use to clean my ukuleles every once in a while. He told me don't do it all the time because you will just eat away the finish eventually. But if you do it every once in a while, it can really bring back the shine of your instrument, especially if you have a gloss instrument with a gloss finish. It will, it can really restore that beautiful shiny look if that's sort of your jam. With those polishes, it's really simple. You just get out a rag and put like a dime size or nickel size kind of droplet of the polish on the rag, and then you just kind of wax on, wax off onto the body of the instrument. As far as I can tell, there's not really any way to mess it up. I've never had too much residue anywhere that I can't wipe away. But you just wax on, wax off, and then after the cleaner, you hit it with the polish, and the polish kind of lifts everything and brings it back to the shiny. Something that's a little bit more tactile and something that I sort of enjoy watching as a process a little bit more is oiling the fretboard. Because after time, even here in Hawaii, the fretboards on an ukulele will dry out. They'll get just kind of more grayish looking. If you have a rosewood fretboard, it'll become just kind of flat, the colors. And by oiling it up, you can restore some moisture to the fretboard, bring it back to life. It'll look a lot better. It'll kind of feel better. It just makes the instrument feel a little bit more engaged with. A lot of people use lemon oil, which is, I guess, a specialty thing that you can buy for instrument fretboards. You just take, again, just a little bit, wipe it on. You can let it sit for a second and then wipe it off. And it should just completely restore the fretboard, make it look like it's brand new, and it'll be beautiful again. A fun thing that I've been trying is kukui oil, which is the traditional canoe plant Hawaiian oil source. The Hawaiians brought the kukui tree with them on their canoes when they first journeyed to the islands, and the kukui tree makes a nice little nut that if you break the shell, take the flesh out, and then press the flesh into an oil, it's a beautiful oil. It's super nice for your skin, but it also is kind of a traditional wood polishing oil. And I've been putting that on my ukuleles. I hope that the luthiers out there aren't cringing and I'm doing something wrong, but it seems great. It does pretty much exactly the same thing as what lemon oil does. It smells nice if you roast the nuts beforehand. So if you live in Hawaii and you have access to a kukui tree, if you don't, just go to the park or the local gulch or whatever and pick some. You gather them off the ground. You don't pick them off the tree. But that's a fun way to create your own oil and have a little bit more of a special connection with your ukulele. It feels like really spa day for your ukulele, and it gets to have a little bit of oil produced locally. I'm sure if you're in a different part of the world and you have a special oil source, do some research on it, but I don't see why other oils wouldn't work as long as it's not some cheap, yucky thing. But that really brings a sense of satisfaction to me, is being able to see that dry fretboard go from kind of yucky, unloved, to just being beautiful and fresh again. It's really nice. Some other random things that will help your ukulele last, and this is a big one, though it's kind of location specific, but is very important, is don't ever leave your ukulele in the car. If it's a wooden ukulele, get it out of the car if you're going to leave it sit in the sun for a while. Because the insides of cars, as we know, get very hot when out in the sun. At least here, if you go to Kona and you park your car at Target or somewhere in the concrete jungle and you come back, it is just insanely hot inside your car. And that heat will melt the glue on your ukulele, and you'll come back and your bridge will be lifted off, if not the whole top, or worse. It's best to carry your instrument with you when you have to leave your car like that. Unless you have an outdoor ukulele, in which case it's not a big deal. You just leave it and it's fine well past whatever car temperatures get to in the heat department. That's great. I've never had it explode or deform or anything. That's why it's the car ukulele. And if I'm bringing other instruments with me, it's always a very intentional journey, and I always have an intention for that instrument. It's not just to holo around and, have something to play. Usually that just to have something to play instrument will be the outdoor ukulele because I don't need to think about it. And it's just there when I need it. But if I'm taking a different instrument, I will always, always, always take it with me into the store or wherever I'm going and make sure that it is out of the sun. And even just having a black ukulele case sitting in direct sunlight, if you're in a hot area, that can do the same thing as well if it gets hot enough. So it's just be mindful the sun is a star. We forget that. It is a flaming ball of gas and it is throwing off lots of radiation that would like to fry your ukulele. So just be mindful of that as you go through your day. It's bad news. One of the last main things you can do for your instrument to kind of refresh it and bring it back to life is, of course, change the strings. And I've been kind of avoiding doing a string podcast because it seems so boring and pointless. But maybe it could be helpful for folks. But just in general, if you have an ukulele with an old set of strings on it that haven't been changed in, months to years, you can change the strings. And a lot of times, whatever you put on there is going to be better than the old worn out strings, especially if you play a lot. They're going to wear out faster. And something new will kind of revive the brightness. And also, it will be easier to tune because as strings get older, they become harder to play in tune. And you'll start tuning them by ear and it won't sound right. And then once it does sound right, it's out of tune with the other strings. And that's because the intonation of the string itself, the string is basically out of tune with itself. So nothing that you play on it is going to sound correct. And a new set of strings will almost every time fix this. So get a pack of your favorite ukulele strings. And if you need to, look up some directions. I've got a walkthrough on my website of how to change strings on an ukulele. It's really pretty straightforward. All you need is a pair of nail clippers to chop off the loose ends of the strings or cut the strings to length as you go. And try it out. It's really a healthy part of keeping your ukulele going. And certainly it helps improve the sound quite a bit if you've been playing on the same strings for a long time. So in reality, there's not really that much to taking care of an ukulele. It's not something that you need to put a lot of headspace towards. It also kind of depends on your outlook, how much time you're willing to invest in taking care of the instrument, and how much your instrument really requires. Because I think there's a big difference between taking care of the ukulele in making sure that it's not broken or damaged, and taking care of the ukulele in kind of an over-the-top way that isn't necessarily required, but it's something that makes you happy. And we don't all need to strive for having a perfectly polished ukulele every second of every day. And that's something that I very quickly got over when I was first beginning to play. Is I had my shiny new Kamaka, and I'd always polish it after I played. And then, after a couple of months, I'd stop polishing it after I played. And now my ukuleles, I change the strings when they start sounding dull and getting hard to tune, and I polish them when they get super gross, and I fretboard, oil the fretboard when it needs it. But otherwise, as long as you keep them away from damaging things, the other bits of caring for the instrument are kind of subjective to what your needs are. And for me, my needs are having an instrument that is immediately playable and something that I can create beautiful music on. I'm not super worried about how it looks. And so I'm not super fussed about, getting some sweat on it or getting some dust on it or whatever it might be, as long as the instrument is available for being played. But if you're a little bit more interested in collecting or just having that kind of curation connection to your instruments of always keeping them perfectly shiny and stuff, and you always wipe them down after you play, because body oils, especially for some people, can tend to gunk up the finish or even eat away at the finish. And so wiping off whatever gunk you've put on there as you've been playing can help extend the life of the instrument and can help extend the life of the finish, if anything. Like a lot of my ukuleles are starting to wear down where I play a lot, where my fingers scratch the finish, but also in areas where I haven't bothered to wipe away the oils or whatever have collected. And I think that has contributed to the finish wearing faster than it would have if I was cleaning and wiping it down after every single playing session. But for me, that's just not practical. That makes the experience at this point in my life a little bit humbug. So I will sacrifice a little bit of finish loss for kind of the ease and speed of being able to just stick it back in the case and lock it up, put it away, and I can move on with my day that much quicker. But it all depends. It's all up to you and what makes you happy, what makes you feel connected to your instruments and connected to music. So take that all with a grain of salt. Definitely be mindful of ways you can take care of your instrument, but don't let it super guide you. I don't think that there is a set of requirements as long as your instrument isn't getting damaged. But then at the same time, there are people who set their ukuleles on fire and things like that. So to each their own, I guess. Thanks for tuning in. I'll keep this episode short and get on out of here. If you want to support the podcast, please go subscribe to it on your podcasting service of choice. Whether you have an Apple device, you can use the Podcasts app. If you have an Android device, you can use the Google Play Store or Google Music, whatever they're calling it these days, and hitting that subscribe button. It's a free way for you to help boost the rankings of the podcast and get it in front of more listeners. Additionally, please go check out liveukulele.com. There are tons of free lessons and guides on there for how to play ukulele better. Also, more information about different caring for your ukulele aspects and links to appropriate resources. There are also my ebooks and my course on playing double stop leads. That's my highest quality content that I produce, and it's a great way to support the vision of what I'm doing here. My name is Brad Bordessa. The podcast is published on the first and third Saturdays of every month. Though last month I started doing kind of an after hours thing, which is just a loosey-goosey one-take podcast hangout where I kind of just play and practice and talk about things on my mind. I'm not considering those official episodes, but if you want to tune in, you might learn something interesting, and certainly it's a way for you to kind of, I'm thinking it's a way for people to kind of see what I do in the background and be a little bit more transparent, share some of my process, I guess, with you folks. So as always, thanks for the support, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Be well out there and keep on playing music.